Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, sports fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show. And, of course, coming to you live and direct. Well, maybe not live yet. We're going to do some live shows. That'll be fun. But coming to you from the FanStream Sports Ohio studios here, a brand new studio set up here in North Columbus, part of the FanStream Sports Network. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be on here, taking the Tim May Show to maybe a bigger audience. We'll see how it grows along the way. But, football season, and man, it's just really, when you get to this point and you're a big football fan like I am, like I've always been since I knew what anything was in life, since I was 4 or 5 years old, football season's only really hours away. In terms of, matter of fact, there's going to be real games this weekend in college football on what they call the zero week. I don't know why they do that. I don't know why it wouldn't be the number one week if you're allowing people to play games, but they're going to be, and of course we're building up, have been, it seems like since last season ended, building up to the season opener, the much ballyhooed season opener, Ohio State hosting Texas, 1 versus 2 in one poll, 1 versus 3 in the other. Texas being number 1 in both polls, both the Associated Press poll and the coaches poll, and Ohio State being number 2 in the coaches poll and number 3 in the AP poll. What a ridiculous season opener! Maybe the biggest season opener in terms of rankings in Ohio State football history. I've covered this team since 1984. This will be my 42nd season being part of coverage of the Ohio State Buckeyes. And definitely this one has been ballyhooed. And, of course, adding to the ballyhoo, as the old saying goes, is the fact how exciting that game was the last time these guys played in the college football playoff national semifinal way back in January, the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, Texas, that had all the drama you could think of. And that's why it's interesting, this podcast, this particular one. I don't have Clay Hall with me. He's still on sabbatical in South Carolina where he's visiting his parents, but he'll be back. He's kind of like going to be on an irregular basis, but he'll be here enough to think it's regular. But the bottom line is the fella I'm going to concentrate on pretty much in this podcast for all kinds of reasons is Ohio State safety Caleb Downs. Obviously, he's going into his second year with the Buckeyes, third year as a college football player. His first year, all he did was show up at Alabama as a freshman and become a starter by midseason at safety for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And who knew that was going to be Nick Saban's final season? The GOAT. 7-time national championship winner, 6 times with Alabama. Who knew at the end of that season, after they got beat by Michigan in the college football playoff semifinal? Remember, there were only 2 semifinals and a final back then in that season after the 2023 season. Who knew that Caleb Downs, or who knew that Nick Saban was going to retire suddenly? And he did. And next thing you know, Ohio State ends up with Alabama starting safety in Caleb Downs. He ends up transferring to Ohio State along with the fellow who was probably going to be Nick Saban's last starting quarterback, as it turns out, Julian Sayin. He was a mere freshman. He'd only been at Alabama for a couple of weeks and actually practiced with him in bowl prep. But he opted to also transfer to Ohio State, and as you well know, at the beginning of this week, as we speak here now, the next to last full week in August, Julian Sayin was named the starting quarterback for Ohio State, beating out Lincoln Keynotes for that job. Ryan Day made a point to point that out to us at the beginning of the week, and we'll see where that goes. But like I said, I'm going back to the fact that this is going to be a story for another term about Caleb Downs, who went from freshman starter at Alabama to sophomore starter at Ohio State, and by the end of the season, he was as much a leader on that defense that ended up the number 1 defense in the country, by the way, under the direction of Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator, who, as you all know, if you've been paying attention, opted to leave and go to Penn State in the offseason. So that sets up quite a collision at the end of October for Ohio State and everybody who's involved in that regard. But Ohio State ended up having the number one defense in the country and basically the number one safety in the country in Caleb Downs by the end of the national championship run, when Ohio State reeled off 4 straight victories, unprecedented in major college football history from a playoff standpoint, because there'd never been a 12-team playoff before. And Caleb Downs asserted himself as a leader on that defense more and more as the season went on. And the way you understand it, from the players plus Ryan Day only meeting after the I wouldn't call it tragic, because I don't think losing a football game is a tragedy by any stretch. But after the "are you kidding me" 4th straight loss to Michigan, where Ohio State was heavily favored, we all know what happened then. That the players and Ryan Day, the players requested a meeting with Ryan Day, a team meeting, and Ryan Day conducted it, took the slings and arrows of the players, and then left the room. And the players had their own meeting, and instead of maybe there were arrows thrown at the beginning of the meeting, but at the end of the meeting, it was basically people joined hands, had a big prayer, and came out of that a much different football team than it had gone into the weekend. And as we all know, then reeled off the 4 more impressive victories in Ohio State history. So to get that national championship. But part and parcel, the way you understand, a guy who didn't mind speaking his mind in that meeting, just like he maybe as the year went on, even in the deep with the defense, was Caleb Downs. And if you've ever been around this guy, it's a pleasure being around him, because he's a very confident young man. You can tell even when in speaking with you, he's a prepared young man. He doesn't just throw words out there like corned beef hash. I mean, whenever he tells you something, he's definitely thought about it. He's thought through the answer, or if he doesn't really feel comfortable with an answer to it, he just moves on. He just next question, for want of another term. But the thing about him is he has become a great leader on this Ohio State football team. And so we got to speak with him earlier this week, him along with several other members of the secondary or the safeties, and Matt Guerrieri, and Matt Guerrieri, who's the safeties coach. I'm naming him because you're going to hear him in his voice here in a few minutes, talking about what Caleb Downs, how he's I don't know what the word is, how he has developed as a leader, or maybe matured as a leader, I think is the best way of putting it. And then you're going to hear from Lorenzo Styles Jr., who's a nickel back on this team, possible cornerback at times on this team, but talking about what Caleb Downs has meant to this defense also from a leadership standpoint, but more than that, maybe even from a football acumen standpoint. If you remember the last time Ohio State and Texas met, I'm sure you do remember, it was on all the television screens in Ohio, I do believe, and across the nation. But you remember the goal line stand on second down. In that goal line stand is Caleb Downs, who basically understood. You could see him. It become clear to him what play Texas was going to run on second down. He stepped up, directed some traffic, and then stepped up into a slot off the left side of the Texas offensive line. And as soon as the pitch left came, remember Texas was at the 1 yard line. Pitch left came, he shot the gap and forced the running back wide. The running back kind of stiff armed him out of the way. But then Lathan Ransom I called him and Lathan Ransom heat-seeking missiles last year. The way they came off the rails, like on an F-16, whenever they saw what was happening, they were lickety split right to the spot. Lathan Ransom came off and tackled the running back for a 7-8 yard loss. And so suddenly Texas was facing 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, 3rd and goal from the 7 or 8 or 9 yard line. And then Jack Sawyer tipped Quinn Ewers' next pass. And then, of course, on the 4th down play, Jack Sawyer came off the edge and strip sacked Quinn Ewers, caught the ball in mid-stride, scooped and scored with a touchdown that put Texas away. And as I like to remind people, on Texas' next possession, which was do or die, obviously, I mean, Hail Mary time almost, it was Caleb Downs, who ended up with the interception deep in the secondary. So on one play, he was coming off the edge and forcing a guy wide 7 or 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And then on the last play of the whole kit and caboodle, he's deep, playing pure, true safety, reading the play, making the interception. That's the kind of flexibility that Caleb Downs brings to the fore. And so, let's get into playing a couple of videos here for you with our interviews with Caleb Downs, and along with, like I said, Matt Guerrero, the safeties coach, and Lorenzo Styles Jr. But let's start first with Caleb Downs on the honor, by the way. I didn't have to tell you this, on the honor of being elected one of the 4 captains for Ohio State for this season. Remember, this guy is, he's still just 20 years old. And like I said, he's considered one of the elite players, not just on the team, but as a leader.
Captain.
I think it just shows God's presence on my life, the ability that he's given me to move here last year and to have the impact that I've had and to create the relationships that I have with my teammates. I think it's just a blessing to be in the position I'm in.
How do you feel like you've evolved as a leader now that you've been here for a full year?
I think I'm just more of a vocal leader. Last year we had a lot of guys that were seniors and everything like that, and it was a very big cultivation of people, and now it's more of a small group of us doing it. So I would say just stepping out of my shell, trying to be more of a vocal leader to the guys.
Davison calls you a coach. He says he has conversations with you like he would with a coach and stuff. And have you always been natural in that regard of leadership, Caleb? When it comes your time, you're ready to step up.
Yeah, I feel like God has blessed me with an innate sense to see this game, and I feel like it's my job to share with my teammates. So, there's no really other way to say it. If I want us to be the best team that we can be, I have to share that knowledge with everybody else.
How important is it on a team that's replacing basically 8 starters on defense? A lot of guys have played a lot, but how important is it to, for one of another term, have a guy like you in the midst of all that? To show guidance, to
I can't say how critical I am to any of this.
I know, you know the role you play out there. Yeah.
I feel like it's critical to communicate on defense. I feel like Coach P says that is our job, to communicate on defense. So, yeah, I think I do that at a really high level. So,
yeah, his coach, Matt Guerrero, agrees with that and talked about his development, talking about Caleb Downs, his development as a leader as well as a football player. And, his study habits when it comes to preparing for games, it looks like even preparing for practices, is next level. CJ Hicks, who's basically a defensive end on this team, was talking about the coach on the field kind of aspect that Caleb Downs is, but also how, in practices, for example, over the last several weeks, how Caleb Downs is calling out the offense and what play it's about to run before the offense runs it. And then when they try to change it, like Julian saying, the starting quarterback, or Lincoln Keno's tries to change it, depending on what group is going to go, what group, that particular play, that particular rep, how Caleb Downs also knows the play they're going to switch to. So, it's quite that's quite confounding for the offense. That's why you finally got to play somebody else, man, because everybody knows everybody's plays anyway when it comes to practicing. I don't know how they ever satisfy a head coach on what's going well and what's not going well, because if you've got an astute defense, it should know what plays your astute offense is running from one practice to the next if they're paying at least any kind of attention. But let's get to what Matt Guerrero had to say about Caleb and his evolution as a leader. Not really evolution as a leader, but more of his feeling more and more confident about being a leader and stepping up.
Seen Caleb grow this year.
Leadership. I think when you're a young player, take Caleb at Alabama, highly recruited guy, comes in, earns his stripes as an All-American his freshman year, but you're just a young player. You're not the guy that, like, you're down by 10 10 at halftime, and the guys all look to you, right? So you're just, at that point, you're just playing the game and you're contributing at a high level as a player. When he first came here, and I respect it, he and I have talked long about this, I respected the way that he went about it. He wanted to get to know his teammates. He didn't come in like he was the big dog, and there were other veterans in that room, whether it was Denzel Burke or Lathan Ransom, and Caleb kind of came in and built relationships and then let his play and who he is as a person speak for itself from there. Well, now you turn it over, you're a third-year player, and right, wrong, good, bad, everybody looks at number 2. And that's a huge growth moment for Caleb to say, hey, I'm a captain of this team. The team's going to go how I go. I'm not just impacting the game through my play, but good or bad, I'm the vocal leader of our team.
Yeah, that's such an interesting remark to hear from a coach, because there is supreme confidence in this young man and what he brings, and of course, it takes 11 guys on defense, so you can't play defense all by yourself. But when you have more of an idea of what's coming from one play to the next, you'll hear Caleb talk about that here in a minute, just on the ability to see things, but also from different angles. And let's just get right to that. I mean, or at least a more conversation with Caleb Downs about the amount of work he's put into understanding football, but some of it comes naturally. We've all seen guys growing up. I remember we had, fellas in our neighborhood or fellas in our little league team or our high school teams and stuff who just they could just play the game. I've had my middle kid, Corey May, man, he was just a natural center fielder, but he could also play shortstop. He also could pitch and stuff, but he's one of those guys that could be off at the crack of the bat when he was 10 years old. He knew where the ball was going, whereas his dad, yours truly, would probably have to stand there for like 2 seconds to number one to even know which way to go. I mean, some guys just come along who have a feel for the game, and Caleb Downs is definitely like that. He has a feel for football.
That IQ that you have is just natural instinct that maybe you've always had versus, you're kind of a football nut. You watch a lot. How much of that is either one of those things?
I feel like from the moment I played this game, I've had an innate sense to do that. So I can't really take credit for that. That's really God. But yeah, I've honed in a lot of the skills and tried to learn from Coach Walt, Coach G, and Coach Patricia as much as I can, just to further my knowledge. And I don't know everything, so just the knowledge that people have been doing this a lot longer than me and that I don't know everything, they know a lot more than me, and trusting their intelligence and IQ.
How do you grow that voice to be a guy who can help these guys and to tell them, hey, this is what I see, this is what we should be doing, when a guy like Davison can call you Coach Downs? Like, I'm sure that's something you had to learn and kind of grow into.
Man, he be joking too much. But
by the way, he's talking about Davison Igbinosun, Ohio State's one of the 3 returning starters on defense, cornerback. Davison, he's a cut up sometimes, man, but he pretty much tells you what he thinks and what he feels. And he was talking with us before we got to talk to Caleb, and he was referring to the fact he talks to Caleb almost like he is a coach. When they get to the sidelines, sometimes runs things by him, looks for guidance from him because he trusts him. That's what's coming out of Caleb's mouth is not just good for the team, but good for Davison. And so it's pretty funny. Like I said, one of the things you really like about Caleb is he's confident in his abilities, but he's not out there beating his chest about it.
I would say for me, it's just a responsibility for anybody on defense. I said it's our job to communicate, and I can't really hold back what I see on the field because maybe I should or may not say the things that I need to say. But if I want us to be able to make the plays that are about to come and I feel like I can see them before they happen, what am I going to do to just not tell everybody what is going to happen and allow them to play fast too?
What do you like about that nickel roll versus
closer to the box, closer to the action, and then you get a lot more chances to be at the point of attack of the football.
Your role evolved during the season last year. How do you foresee it evolving further this year?
Not a clue. Not a clue. We're just focused on the first game.
How do you prepare yourself for the possibility of having to play several different positions in the same game?
Just continue to learn how to see the games from multiple views. See it from 15 yards, see it from 5 yards, see it from 4 yards, see it from 8 yards. I feel like that's a big thing that not a lot of people talk about, just being able to see the game from different viewpoints to allow yourself to play fast in any position.
And how have you seen Jalen?
That was interesting, a point he made, kind of touched on it a second ago, but, C.J. Hicks was talking about that. C.J. Hicks was a linebacker until now. They've moved him pretty permanently to defensive end, edge rusher for the most part, but he's still got to be able to understand what's going on in front of him, but from a different angle. When you're up on the line compared to even being 3 steps off the line on the edge, it's a total different perspective for you. And that's where Caleb Downs excels, because it's a 3D game, right? And understanding that aspect of it, of understanding how different a play can look from up on the line of scrimmage, out on the edge, as opposed to 15 yards off the ball in a classic safety position. It's just it's different. And the reads, maybe the keys maybe aren't different, but the way the keys set things up are different for you. And just right on down the line, there are all these little nuances that you have to learn and enjoy. And with Matt Patricia, the new defensive coordinator, he's coming from the National Football League. He was on a sabbatical last year, was in the media at points last year, but before that, he'd been the head coach at Detroit. That didn't go very well, as he'll be the first one to tell you. But even before that, he was ended up being the defensive coordinator for the New England Patriots and Coach Bill Belichick. And we all know the NFL now, especially on both sides of the ball, is a matchup game, a chess game par excellence, where you're either zeroing in on taking somebody out of an offense by some kind of coverage scheme, or you're zeroing in on a guy that you can beat up front to make a play. I know they do that to a certain extent at every level of football, but the pros do it at an extreme level. And you do believe that's what part and parcel of what Matt Patricia's going to bring even more to the fore for Ohio State this season defensively. He did a lot of that, obviously, in the past, and definitely last year under Jim Knowles' direction. But when you've got a guy like Caleb Downs, who can line up at classic safety, or line up like he did last year at the end of the year a lot as a backer to the linebackers, maybe 3 or 4 yards behind the linebackers, and go to the, like I said, a heat-seeking missile going to the ball or going to the point of attack. Or he can walk up to the line of scrimmage and line up right there in the slot or right off the edge. It just gives you so many more options on how you can not only make plays as a defense, but scare the bejeezles out of an offense and a quarterback, and make the quarterback have to think a lot more than he wants to. Where's Caleb Downs on this play? Oh, no. What is Ohio State up to on this day? And then, of course, he'll play games even within those games. So Matt Patricia, you can just tell when we're talking with Matt Patricia, he feels like he's got the perfect weapon to use in a defense such as that in Caleb Downs. But because if Caleb Downs gets off to the edge somewhere or wherever he is and sees something that's not right, he can call it out and get people lined up, fix the play, fix the defensive set before the play comes. I mean, he has that capability. And, we're gushing a little bit on Caleb Downs, but so is everybody else. I mean, he is considered the number one defensive player in the country for all kinds of reasons. One of them is definitely his acumen for the game. But the other part, I keep reminding people, maybe I've already said it before in this podcast, but I'll say it again. He has all that going for him, but then he also has the physical ability to go make the play. Not everybody has all of those things going for them, and that's what stands out. But let's get back to more conversation here with Caleb Downs.
And Malik step up in camp?
I think they've had a lot of improvement. I mean, we've been pushing everybody to be better, not just them, but every position to compete and play at a high level.
And by the way, here he's talking about the other two fellows are going to be playing safety, Jalen McClain and Malik Hartford, who have, who are competing for that other safety spot. But also there's a good chance you could see them both on the field at the same time with Caleb Downs. That old mix and match thing. You saw Jim Knowles bring in a 4-2-5 defense, but that doesn't mean the same people lined up in the same way on every play. every series, much less every play, much less every series. And so that's what Matt Patricia, when you talk to all these players, they just tell you different things are coming from Matt Patricia, but of course they're not telling us what they are. I guess we're going to find out on August 30th, starting at high noon, on what little nuanced differences are going to be in this defense, if we can spot them right away at all. But the interesting thing is when you've got two guys who can play classic safeties, and then throw a guy like Caleb Downs in there, who can be at safety 1 minute and nickel back the next. Heck, he could probably roll up and be your, I call it nickel back. You can call it slot corner, whatever the modern way of looking at it. When you've got a guy like that, who you don't have to take off the field and put another guy in to change that, it just gives you all kinds of options on defensive play calls. And of course, Lorenzo Styles Jr. is also going to be playing that nickel back, that slot corner position. You got to believe. I mean, losing Jordan Hancock, that was a big loss to this defense, because he ended up being one of the more valuable players on it as the season went along last year. Of course, he got drafted, is in the National Football League now. But the bottom line is having versatility among players who can then just physically line up and cover a guy, much less not so much where you're putting them in the defense, but can they physically line up and take a player away or cover a guy man to man when you need that. That's what Caleb Downs gives you in the midst of that defense. So let's hear what he's talking about Jalen McClain and Malik Hartford as they've matured over this, especially over this preseason.
And they played exceptionally well. I'm excited for both of them to see what they do on the field.
Your impression of the progress of Devin Sanchez to this point?
He's progressed a lot since the spring. He's extremely talented. He'll have a chance to do what he's supposed to do when he gets his chance.
Devin Sanchez, by the way, from Texas, Galena Park North Shore High School, one of the great big school football programs in the state of Texas. That's saying a lot. But 5-star freshman cornerback, big guy. When we talk about the cornerbacks, initially you talk about Davison Igbinosun and Jermaine Matthews, Aaron Scott, but you got to throw Devin Sanchez into the talk at least, because too many people are buzzing about him right now, whether he'll be quite ready for prime time or high noon, whatever you want to call the Texas game kickoff. To be thrust in there remains to be seen. A lot of questions will be answered just on the way the coaches play these players as the season opener goes, much less the rest of the season. But this is a major opener, and you'll see who the coaches truly trust to play. But Devin Sanchez definitely has a high ceiling. Let's just put it that way. If in fact he has a ceiling. But let's get back to more with Caleb Downs.
And last question, right? Caleb, you've gotten the chance now, twice to play against Texas and Coach Sark. Yeah. What stands out kind of about their offense, and what makes them difficult to stop with him calling plays?
I was about to say that. I was like, this is my third time playing them in 3 years. But he does a great job at OC. He builds the plays to have a lot of eye candy. And their offense does a great job executing the plans that he makes out for them. His 15-play script is legendary. So he's been doing this for a long time. He's a really good coach.
Boy, you just get the idea, right? That Caleb Downs is very much looking forward to this challenge. It's kind of crazy, man. This is big time football. I mean, that's the reason I'm going to be talking about Ohio State a lot, obviously, on this podcast, even though we want to include the whole state, especially when it comes to the Browns and the Bengals. And, their opener is still 2 weeks away. But just the athletes we're seeing now on a consistent basis at Ohio State, forget about even athletes, the football players we're seeing on a consistent basis at Ohio State are just par excellence, elite. And, obviously they're out there recruiting, and they're not winning every recruiting battle, not by any stretch, because a lot of these elite programs are going after the same guys. But Caleb Downs is a great example of, he didn't start his career at Ohio State. He started at Alabama. Ohio State was probably his second choice, but he stayed closer to home. And then when things didn't go well, he moved to Ohio, and has picked up right where he left off, and almost seamlessly, and has become a leader on this football team. And I'm going to have Lorenzo Styles Jr. address that, because it's really funny. I'm going to have him address what Caleb Downs is, but a little background on Lorenzo Styles Jr. for those who aren't quite up to speed on that. He started his college football career at Notre Dame, and was going to be a big-time wide receiver. And basically his baby brother, as I call him, Sonny Styles, a year behind him, or 2 years behind him in school, opted to stay home and play where his dad played at Ohio State, came in as kind of a too big to play safety, and has now become one of the more ballyhooed linebackers in the country, and was named also the recipient of the Block O jersey for this season, because he symbolizes what Bill Willis, legendary, a former Buckeye from the early 1940s, and one of the first African-American players to play in the National Football League for Paul Brown with the Cleveland Browns, symbolizes what Bill Willis was all about from a leadership standpoint, from being stalwart among his peers, etc. So, he and Caleb Downs kind of share the captaincy responsibilities for Ohio State on the defensive side of the ball. And by the way, speaking of naming captains, Ohio State did that over this past weekend. One of the guys named was Brandon Ennis, wide receiver, who hasn't become a full-time starter yet, although it looks like, if Ohio State definitely goes with three wide receivers to open the game, he will be one of the starters. Starter is almost a euphemism now when it comes to skill players for Ohio State, because they may start 4 wide receivers one game and 2 the next, or maybe even 1. They may get into 2 or 3 tights and 1 wide receiver. You never know what they're going to put out on the field on that first play, which, boom, you're a starter then, right? But Brandon Ennis, clearly the respect he's gained among his peers on this team of never being quite that full-time player. But you all know he was number 11 then. He's wearing number 1 now. He made huge plays for the Buckeyes at different times during last year's season, especially the Penn State game, the game with Texas, the win over Texas. He made some huge plays throughout the playoffs. So now his respect is such that even though he's never been a full-time starter, he was elected captain. And speaking of that, neither Austin Saraveld has never been a starter, but Austin Saraveld, who's probably been the story of this Ohio State football program from the end of last season to now, in the asserting himself as being a must-play offensive lineman. There's a good chance he's going to start at left tackle. At the beginning of preseason camp, a lot of us were projecting he was going to be the starter at right tackle, but with Ethan Onyeonwa, the transfer from Rice, looking like he was going to be the guy at left tackle. But now all of a sudden, according to Ryan Day, they've used Austin Saraveld a lot at left tackle in the last couple of weeks of practice. And he hinted, without saying it, confirming it, there's a good chance Austin Saraveld could start at left tackle. I wouldn't be surprised to see him still at right tackle and Onyeonwa at left tackle for that first series against Texas. That remains to be seen. But what a story Austin Saraveld is, because he too was elected captain. And man, there's a big human being right there. But so we'll see how he goes. But let's get back to more of the conversation about Caleb Downs, though, and how his fellow players see him. And I'm going to go now to a cut from Lorenzo Styles Jr., just talking about, his respect for this young man, Caleb Downs. Lorenzo Styles Jr. is in his 4th year, I think, of college football. And, but you see guys come along, just like he saw his quote, baby brother, end quote, come along and be named not just a captain this year, but also that Block O award winner, Block O jersey winner. He's seen Caleb Downs mature.
seen him step up as a leader in the secondary this offseason?
I mean, you see named captain, so that's just, he got my vote. So it's just a lot of respect from the team, but then he's just really being more vocal and like bringing energy. You need guys every single day to bring energy just because you can't really be up and down at DB. You have to be consistent. You have to have the energy all the time, or they're going to try to throw the ball over your head. So he's one of the guys that we can always count on to bring that.
When somebody just mentions Jermaine Matthews, what's the option?
Energy is another big word for Jermaine. That dude, like he goes hard every single day. He's stepping into more of a leadership role. He's had some snap under his belt, so he's bringing some guys along with him. But then he's also just developing himself and becoming a better player every day.
Have you seen Davison Igbinosun change over the last couple of years? Turns out, from the standpoint, confident guy. Go ahead.
Yeah, IGB is a real confident guy, but I would just say his football intelligence. You'll be able to see him do different things this year. He's been really intentional about not just learning what it's like to play corner, but understanding the whole structure of the defense and how he could play a part in that, whether that be like where the linebackers' placement's at, like his leverage, just things like that. So having his better understanding, it's going to sharpen his game. And he's been real intentional working on like he's playing the ball downfield, how he wants to play certain routes and everything, put himself in the best position to make a play.
Yeah, everybody wants to take a simplistic look at this defense. You're replacing 8 starters, quote starters.
Yeah.
A lot of guys played last year. Jermaine Matthews played in big moments and stuff. How would you assess this defense right now in terms of what it could be about?
I mean, yeah, like it is. We did have a lot of guys leave, so guys do have to step into the role. But Ohio State, like you breed guys to do that. Like this is Ohio State, so the expectation is for us to go out there and be the silver bullets. You don't want to look at it as simple as that, but at the end of the day, it's just you're tackling and getting off blocks. It's like a simple game. So as long as we follow what the plan that they already have in place for us, I think we'll be good.
I'm sure playing that nickel spot, you've gone up against Brandon Innes a lot. How have you seen him grow this offseason and become a captain himself?
Yeah, Brandon's one of the guys you can count on every single day to bring energy as well. He gets that offense hyped up. I mean, JJ, he's going to make big plays, but there's someone who needs to be vocal and step up on that offense, with having like guys like Emeka and Travion, guys like that leave. And he's really stepped in that role, and he's doing a fantastic job.
You may have gotten asked this before I walked over here, but your little brother is wearing the Blocko. He's the captain. What is special about him? Because you've known him his whole life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is fantastic, Sonny. I think it just shows his commitment to Ohio State and the program. To get that award, you have to show up and be the same guy every single day. And I think he shows how much he cares about the brotherhood, how much he cares about really this game. And then it's also just a shout out to my parents and then the coaches of everything they poured into him and allowed him to be the man and leader he is.
Yeah, how old was he when you noticed there was something special about him?
I mean, he was always different. Like, we're talking about football. He was always different at football. But, like, the leadership, I mean, I've always seen him play on different teams when he was younger, and he stepped in that roles, and it's natural just because you're the best player. I mean, and he's taller and bigger and faster and everything. But I think more so now it's I'm seeing him bring guys along. I see the development. I've been here long enough to see him, like, take guys under his wing. And I've been around long enough to see, like, him be vocal and really bring the guys together when we need them most.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. I mean, talking about Caleb Downs and giving leadership, but also guidance out on the football field. I mean, there's also things you can do not on the football field to help players along, dealing with the stresses of being a major college football player at a program like Ohio State, where excellence the starting spot, and overachieving is where you want to get to. And Sonny Styles, man, he's just like it's really funny because I covered their dad, Lorenzo Styles Sr. now, but Lorenzo Styles when he was a linebacker at Ohio State, and just really worked hard, one of those hard-nosed kind of players and stuff. And his 2 sons are very much the same kind of guys. And it's just funny to see that rub off in a family, or like Caleb Downs was talking about the innate skills, some of the innate skills he inherited as a football player that make him want to not just prepare for games, but then make plays, but also be a leader out there. Because, you feel like when you're really in the game, there's no, as people say, there's no greater team game than football. And it's not enough to just to know the answers to your own test. It's really cool when you can help other people learn the answers to tests and help them come along. Because the old saying goes, the old cliche, you're only as good as your weakest link, especially on defense. Because as a football season goes along, opposing offensive coordinators will find the weakest link on a defense and attack it. So when you have guys out there who are selfless in a leadership standpoint and in a conveying knowledge standpoint, like Caleb Downs and the Sonny Styles, and they're your two captains, that says a lot about where this Ohio State defense can go. And that is, I don't really have a question about how good this defense can be. I really do think the defensive line is going to be maybe better than a lot of people think. I think some guys are really stepping up in the middle of that defense. I think at defensive end, they're loaded with Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry, who've patiently waited to become the full-time guys at defensive ends, right? With Bo Atkinson transferring in from North Carolina, with the movement of C.J. Hicks from linebacker to the edge, just to name a few of the guys that you're going to be seeing play probably a lot in that season opener, and then right on down the line. But at the defensive tackle spots, that's where the playable depth was in question going into the spring, and then even going into preseason camp. They weren't really able to go out and find anybody to help that depth because, as Ryan Day said, you don't want to just bring somebody in who's maybe not even as good as the players you've already got. That'd be wasting everybody's time. But you've really, because Edric Houston suffered that little slight injury at the beginning of camp, you've seen Will Smith Jr., son of Will Smith, All-American defensive end here back on that 2002 national championship team. You've seen Will Smith Jr. really step up his game, for example, as camp has gone along. The Moore has stepped up his game. A lot of guys have stepped up their game in that defensive tackle area, where right now you're looking at projected starters of being Caden McDonald in that A-gap area, basically nose tackle, and a three-technique Edric Houston, who came as a ballyhooed defensive end, but it was clear almost from the start that he was going to physically grow into looking more like a tackle. But he's a tackle with defensive end capabilities, which, you can, Matt Patricia's champing at the bit. You can feel that right now of exploiting what that means from an athletic standpoint, of putting a guy like that in there against a guard or a guard tackle slot and seeing how he can go. And then Matt Patricia, is going to mix and match. He and Larry Johnson are going to mix and match some guys from the outside, bring them to the inside on certain occasions. So, you can rob Peter to pay Paul when it comes to playing defense, especially with the big guys and getting those mismatches you're looking for, as we referred to earlier in this podcast. So, but anyway, hope you enjoyed the kind of extended conversation with Caleb Downs, and then also with Lorenzo Styles Jr. I'll let that roll just so you could get a feel for what some of these other guys like Jermaine Matthews, like I said, we saw him play a lot in key situations last year at cornerback, especially against Texas. He was in there, I do believe, on that goal line stand at corner. Matter of fact, I think he had a pass interference call made against him that gave them the first and goal at the 1. But he played stoutly from that moment on in that series. So you've seen him play before. Davison Igbinosun, I brought him up to Lorenzo Styles Jr. only because there's a guy. Once again, his ceiling is way high, and what he had to do, what he had to deal with in the offseason again. We talked to him about this. He became almost a target for officials to pay close attention to on his use of his hands, maybe too much. Had a few pass interference holding calls, things like that on him over the last year and a half, last couple of seasons. But he's worked really hard, like he said, on getting his head around, and which he thinks is part and parcel to sometimes when you've got your hands on a player, because everybody puts their hands on players, defensive backs do. But when you got your hands on the player and you're just playing the player instead of maybe playing the ball, you don't get as much leeway from the officials. And he's worked very hard on that aspect of his game. As you know, it became famous at the end of last season how Tim Walton, defensive backs coach, he's pretty much the coordinator of the secondary now. He and Matt Guerreri working together, but how Tim Walton, in essence, put boxing gloves on him, for want of another term, on Davison, so he couldn't grab during practices and stuff. And Davison said he uses them occasionally, even now, to kind of reinforce that. But he's worked steadily on becoming just the consummate kind of corner. he could have left. I mean, he was eligible to leave after last season and probably would have been drafted because he does, like I said, when you watch him on video, when you watch him just play, he has ability. I mean, he has big time ability, and he's a big rangy dude. He's an excitable guy, but he loves making plays, but he opted to come back, and his guidance out there as a leader is going to be quite valuable for this young Ohio State defense, at least young at the beginning of the year. There's some embedded experience there, as we've spoken about several times before on this podcast, but you've got to get used to playing full games now. You got to get used to being a starter, and that's tough. That's a tough transition for some football players to make, believe it or not. Some are better off being relief pitchers, and just like in the major leagues in the pitching aspect of things. But we'll see how that goes. It's going to be interesting to see how Texas tries to attack this defense, considering the fact Texas, by the way, has a rebuilt offensive line and lost one of its top tackles in preseason camp. It's going to be interesting to see that little sumo wrestling match go on as the game progresses, because that Ohio State's going to attack in some form or fashion and try to affect quarterback Arch Manning III, try to affect him in terms of being able to sit in the pocket, but also try to turn the heads of the new offensive linemen on Texas. And we all know when it came down to the nitty gritty last year, the biggest plays of the season for both Ohio State defensively and Texas offensively, the Ohio State defense held sway. And that was against those starters for Texas from last season. And so, boy, it always comes down to the offensive lines versus the defensive lines, fellas. I mean, that's why when you see people throwing the football in the parking lot, or you see 7-on-7 games, those are kind of fun to watch or fun to be a part of. But real football is played down in the trenches. That's where it starts and goes from there. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this defense plays, seeing how Caleb Downs asserts himself even more in helping direct traffic and put people in right positions to make plays. But that kind of pretty much wraps it up for this edition of the Tim May Show here on the FanstreamSports.com. I very much appreciate those folks bringing me on board, bringing Clay Hall on board. He'll be back into this week to join me. We're going to be on maybe about 3 times a week with the Tim May Show featuring Clay Hall. But until next time, we'll see you then.